and thank you for joining us today for a conversation on serving veterans, PTSD, and traumatic brain injury. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us, and I look forward to exploring this subject with our two guests. Let me begin by thanking the Enoch for Congress campaign for hosting today's call. And with that, I would also like to introduce Dr. Vanessa Enoch, who is today's host and the founder, and tell you a little bit about her. She is the founder and CEO of Cultural Impact LLC. It is a business management consulting firm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her main focus is public policy and social change. And she is a candidate for Congress in the Ohio 8th District. And thank you, Vanessa. Quickly, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Elaine Hansen. I am the moderator today. I am also the president of Hansen Resource Development, which is a consulting business that designs workshops, offers coaching, facilitates connections and conversations to build community. And I am the new political director for Enoch for Congress campaign. And with that, let me introduce our two guests. Our first guest is James Shepard. He is a Marine veteran and retired from the Ohio Bell Central Office as a technician. Mr. Shepard suffers from PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And he also is an advocate for veterans who cannot represent themselves. Our other guest is Dr. Dora Bronston. She is the spouse of a Marine veteran. She is a retired professor and the former vice mayor of Middletown, Ohio. Her husband currently resides in an Alzheimer's facility with dementia from his PTSD. He also has terminal liver cancer. And Dora also is an advocate for veterans' families. And with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to Dr. Enoch to say more about this subject for us.
Well, thank you so much, Elaine, and thank you, Dora and James, for being here to share with us on this town hall meeting. Again, my name is Dr. Vanessa Enoch. I am a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in the 8th Congressional District, which is composed of Butler, Clark, Darke, Miami, Mercer, and Preble counties in the Ohio, the 8th Congressional District of Ohio. So let me first start by saying there are laws that should protect men and women with service-connected post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries. However, there is a disconnect between the federal laws designed to protect veterans and the implementation of policy. There's also a problem with HIPAA laws as it relates to people who don't have the mental capacity to make decisions for themselves. Often when a veteran suffers from debilitating brain injuries, they're not able to work, make important cognitive decisions, or do simple tasks like dressing themselves and performing normal life skills and tasks that make living life very difficult for them. Things like making a grocery list or creating a household budget. This issue is worsened with age, time, and progression of injuries. But veterans are being denied the right to aid and attendance benefits because these are the invisible wounds of war. People cannot see their injuries, so it's assumed that these injuries are not serious. The problem with this assumption is that for people like Lafayette Bronston, Dora's husband, and James Shepard, who is here with us today, their injuries prevent them from caring for themselves and carrying out their daily routines. Lafayette is currently living with cancer and dementia from his service-connected injuries, and it's causing a significant amount of stress on his wife, Dora, at times rendering her unable to work and having to devote more of her time to completing the tasks Lafayette should otherwise be able to do. Lafayette can't perform his daily task. However, Dora can't be compensated for having to carry the load for her and her husband. because Lafayette has been denied aid and attendance benefits. Veterans Administration aid and attendance or housebound benefits provide monthly payments added to the amount of monthly VA pension for qualified veterans and survivors if they need help with their daily activities. Additionally, current HIPAA privacy laws prevent Dora from speaking for Lafayette, despite the fact that his failing health and cognitive ability prevents him from the ability to make good decisions and speak for himself. Service-connected PTSD and traumatic brain injuries among veterans aren't treated with the same level of care as losing a limb. This issue impacts 11 to 20% of every 100 veterans. The VA reports that there were more than 6,000 veteran suicides each year from 2008 through 2016. And in 2016, the suicide rate was 1.5 times greater for veterans than for non-veteran adults. More than 413,000 service members since 2000 have experienced brain injuries from a variety of causes, according to the Pentagon's Defense and Veterans Brain Injury Center. We need legislators who will listen to the needs of their constituents. Warren Davidson, the congressman in the 8th Congressional District, who I'm running against, called people like James and Lafayette, and I quote, moochers and pretenders who are clogging up the disability compensation system. In the paper 2 weeks ago, Davidson was also quoted as saying that he didn't believe that he would have trouble winning the election again, despite the dangerous and irresponsible decisions he makes for our district and our country. Warren Davidson believes that everyone doesn't deserve health care. I disagree. I believe health care is a human right, so I appreciate having this town hall discussion today. So I'm going to turn the mic back over to Elaine. And thanks again, Dora and James, for being with us. And Elaine, we are excited to have you get the program started.
All right, thank you, thank you. Well, just a quick explanation of how this is going to go. I'm going to ask Dora and James to respond to some questions that I hope are open-ended enough that they will bring their meaning to the questions and help us explore and understand what they have experienced and to either live it or live with someone who has these difficulties, and also how they have interacted with the VA system and what that's been like for them. Probably take only about 10 to 15 minutes per conversation, which means you'll have, about 5 minutes each or a little more to respond to the questions. So as I prepared for today's town hall and reflected on my conversations with James and Dora, it was important to me to be here today so that I could hold space for Dora and James to share their stories of living with PTSD and brain injury and advocating for others. And the other thing that I discovered in talking with my own family members, how PTSD has impacted the lives of my grandson, who served in the Marines and has been back 8 years, and how he continues to struggle with that. The impact it had on his unit when they returned. Only 2 years after returning, one of the young men in his unit committed suicide because he had years fighting with the VA to provide him service for his PTSD, and most importantly, for his traumatic brain injury. And at the time he committed suicide, he was still waiting to have them give him the test. They call it the BTI, for the brain, traumatic brain injury. And so that was a life lost, while bureaucracy prevented him from getting the assistance he needed. I think we've had some technical difficulties, and Dora and James will be back with us shortly. But I know all of us have, well, I shouldn't say all of us, but I think most of us have had someone in our family or a close friend who has had some trauma while they served in the military and have had to deal with the bureaucracy that they have to face. And, you know, you so need an advocate when you're in that kind of situation. And I know my own experience, while it was not with PTSD and traumatic brain injury, was really the importance of the advocate was brought home to me when both my parents were diagnosed with terminal cancer within 2 weeks of each other. And I know from what they went through that if they had not had me to advocate every step of the way, go with them for every appointment they had, that they would not have gotten the quality of care that they did. Because the medical professionals are trained to make decisions based on insurance and not based on the person that's there in front of them. So I still remember one time my mother was having difficulties and the doctor told me that Medicare would not pay for my mother to have a certain service. And I said, you don't get to decide that. You tell me and we'll see if we have the money. So I see that Dora and James are back. So thanks for overcoming the technical difficulties and returning to us. I don't know if you need to take a little breath now, but
yeah, let's, Elaine, let me say this because I think you're absolutely right. I'm glad you shared that personal story. And while we're waiting on Dora and James to come back, I want to say this. One of the things that enabled me or encouraged me to get involved in helping Dora and James, and I've been working with trying to get our legislators to pay attention to the traumatic brain injury issue and to PTSD issue since January with Dora and James. We've gone to Senator Sherrod Brown's office, who is a Democrat. We've gone to Congressman Warren Davidson's office, who is a Republican, who I am running against. I want to say this is not a partisan issue, but I think oftentimes it gets misconstrued as a partisan issue. And it's also, it doesn't discriminate between veterans, no matter what party they are. James is a Republican. Dora is a Democrat. And I think it's important that we all recognize that, this is an issue that impacts veterans no matter what their background is. We have veterans coming from all parts of the country, from various demographics, various ages, race, income status. But especially this particular issue impacts veterans who don't come from money, who may not have other resources. And for somebody like the Congressman Warren Davidson, who believes that some veterans are moochers and pretenders, he believes that people who have and present with traumatic brain injuries should not have health care, should not have aid and attendance. That stems from the fact that I just believe he does not understand and recognize the challenges that some veterans face when they come back after having served in the military. He comes from a well-off family. He doesn't have the same struggles that some veterans have. And so I don't think that should disqualify him from doing his job as congressman in ensuring that all veterans are taken care of, regardless of their background. So I want to go ahead and turn it back over to you so that you can have this conversation and bring Dora and James back in to talk. Are you guys good with your mic over there, Dora?
Yes.
Awesome.
Good. Thank you. Well, Dora and James, here's the question we'll start with is, why was it important for you to be here today to have this conversation?
It was important to me, Elaine, because I want to be a voice for other veteran family members who are going through the same difficult process of communication and receiving support from the VA system, whether it's the PAC team with the doctor and the nurse and the social worker, or whether it's finding out how to file a claim. So there are many things that prevent us to efficiently go through the VA process, and there seems to be no one that can give you those directions. So that's why it's important to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's important to me to join the meeting because I suffer from PTSD and TBI. I probably have one of the earliest effective dates for PTSD dating back to December '78. And I've had to live trying to get these services and things early on, and how difficult it is from the VA. And I'm now 74 years old, and I have just as much trouble today as I had when I first started. Vanessa said that the problem is that people do not understand that it only takes a mild memory loss to cause a serious employment handicap. And they don't consider it to be unless you have a serious memory loss. So I think the congressman, talking about Davison, he doesn't understand that even a mild memory loss would almost knock you out of the workforce. If you don't have at least a serious employment handicap, you're really not diagnosed with mild PTSD. We have to get the VA to diagnose us with severe PTSD before we get any treatment at all. And then they'll tell you that, well, because if you can dress and feed yourself and go to the bathroom, you're not entitled to assistance in your daily living for cooking, cleaning, and shopping and those kind of conditions. And that's discrimination. And I don't think Warren Davis has ever taken the time, although we've worked with him for a long time, to really understand what little problems it takes to cause a major problem in your life.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you. My husband has multiple sclerosis, and I've watched his health decline and his capacities decline. And I would say, I feel like grateful because he's still mobile and he's still able to do things, but I can see the hardships that he goes through and the things that I have to do for him. And if you don't have someone there to do that for you, and not support from the government, the VA, who should be helping you. So as you reflect on your long experience with working and trying to work with the VA, I'd be curious to know, what is the crossroads you face for yourself and for those who advocate as it relates to the PTSD and traumatic brain injury? What is the crossroads you face in continuing this journey?
Go ahead.
My crossroads, as you know right now, there are a number of them. Lafayette's health failing, causing change in not only his life, but in my life and the lifestyle of our family. His health was a crossroads because he was diagnosed with liver cancer, and it was very scary. And then the slippery slope of the dementia, which commenced. And so the two of those things together really caused us to panic. Such a sudden change, like that in our lifestyle would cause you to really panic, and you live your life with an uncertain future. And so my son being in school and college, of course, this started when he was in high school. And so all through his college years, he's had to face the reality of what's been going on with older parents and still focus on his studies, and such that he chose the profession of geriatrics because of his dad and psychology. So it has changed our whole future. I mean, our whole future is different from the picture that we had before. So.
Right. Could you talk a little bit about those that, you advocate for your husband? What is that like for you when you're interacting? Can you tell me more about that?
Certainly. I have issues finding out how to file a claim. I had issues with HIPAA because my husband did not want me going to doctor's appointments with him at times. He wouldn't share that he was going, and he didn't want us to know the diagnosis. When I shared with his doctor that he had some serious mental challenges, they would give him these little mini tests, but it proved to be nothing according to the doctors. And when I finally had the psychiatrist examine him, he was already into severe dementia. Mm-hmm. So having someone to listen to you, that you know what you're talking about, to share what's going on in the family, because 10 or 15 minutes in a doctor's office does not tell you everything about a veteran, about his challenges, about his health or his mental capacity. Right. So then after finding those things out, going through the process of paperwork, so that when they decided to put him in a nursing home, I had to get an attorney to get my trust in place, to get power of attorney, all of those things. So you have financial issues to deal with, to get legal things in order. Right. And then with him going to a nursing home, they decided, and it was by the skin of our teeth, that the VA diagnosed him with an emergency diagnosis and said that it was service connected, so that they would pay for his care, because you don't know if you're going to lose your house. You don't know what's going to happen to your retirement money. It's very stressful. It is overwhelming.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm struck by what you said, because I know with my own parents that I went with them for every single appointment. And it is critical that the doctors hear from the whole family, because you observe things and notice things that the patient may not want to share with the doctor. I've watched that happen. So it's critical. It's the whole family working together for the well-being of that patient. So James, what is the crossroads for you? How are you doing?
Okay, the problems that I've always had is that my injuries occurred, my TBI and PTSD occurred because of shell fragment wound I received before I was 22 while I was in the service. Most Vietnam veterans was injured before during their developmental years, which means if you're injured one day before you're 22, which I was in February, I didn't turn 22 until April, so I fall on the category of being developmentally disabled, which is going to cause a lot more problems just during your development years. And so you're going to have a lot more lifelong problems. Mm-hmm. The problem I had when I went to try to help is that these are state programs. Developmental disability boards are all run through the state, and they get federal funding. So when you go to those state agencies, the first thing they tell you is, you're a veteran, you go through the VA to get your care through them. And so it's very difficult, because when you mention VA, the state doesn't want to do anything about it. So it took me for years to get diagnosed again with traumatic brain injury during my developmental years. And so it's almost impossible to get the state to assist you. All the veterans of Vietnam that should have been under the roles of developmental disabled in the state agencies, I'm the only one I know of that's listed, because I fought so hard to get some of my care. And the next problem you have is like the same thing. When you go to get care, you're talking to these VA employees that doesn't want to help you. The first thing they want to tell you is they want to take away what you can do and don't give you the assistance in what you need. I've been rated as far as being incompetent, shouldn't be driving. But yet when I say, well, how much assistance do I need in my daily living? You don't need anything. Because you can dress and feed yourself, you're not entitled to get any services. Right. I've been through this, and so I've learned to get through the ropes of a lot of places. So that's why I try to do help veterans that to get at least as far as I've got so far. And I think that's how, when I got involved with Dora, that I've helped her, and then Vanessa's got involved, and she sees the problems we're having because she's got involved. We're receiving more attention than I have from the time I was 22 till I'm 74 now.
You know, Elaine, let me say something as well regarding what Mr. Shepard said. I think it's important for people to pay attention to the fact that usually when our young people, our children, go off to serve, they go off at the age of 18 or 19 years old. And Mr. Shepard mentioned that he was 22 years old when he was injured. At that point, the brain is still developing. In fact, scientists say that the brain is developing until age 26 years old. And so for someone who sustains an injury in the military, post a traumatic brain injury, it's impacting the brain at a time that the brain is still developing. And in fact, traumatic brain injury, according to scientists, produces both acute and more chronic consequences that can lead to permanent disabilities and long-term mortality and reduced life expectancy. And so one of the things that scientists have identified as secondary pathological conditions, and some of the things that people who suffer these kinds of traumatic injuries suffer, are things like seizures and sleep disorders and neurodegenerative diseases and neuroendocrine dysregulation and psychiatric problems and those kinds of things. And I know that Dora has shared with me that she has witnessed some of these things with her own husband, and James as well. I've witnessed, just being in the company of James, some of the challenges that he has because of his traumatic brain injuries. But a lot of times you can't look at people who have sustained these and see them. And so where Dora talks about her husband not wanting her to go to the doctor with her and not sharing with her what's going on, Dora also shared with me times that he would go in and talk about or say things that never happened in his life. But for a doctor who's speaking to somebody who has sustained these injuries, that person might look like they're completely normal with no issues. And yet here we have someone who is speaking to a doctor who has no basis in reality, but that doctor has no clue without being able to have someone there in that room to talk to the doctor and to share with that doctor and to say, you know, wait a minute, this doesn't happen. This has never happened. This has no basis in reality. And so there are a couple of legislative things that impact people with traumatic brain injuries and PTSD that people should be aware of. Things like the HIPAA privacy rules that don't enable family members to get involved in the care of their loved ones who maybe have some decreased mental capacities. And that's just one of the laws. James has talked about various laws that need to be changed. And James, if you want to just mention a couple of things that you experienced as a result of the legal aspects of what you've endured and how they need to reflect what's truly happening in those rooms. You want to talk just for a second about that? I want to make sure we don't miss that point.
Yes, well, one of the problems you have is medical terms and legal terms. To be legally disabled, you only have to have a substantial impairment in any major life activity. So if you have what we call moderate PTSD, then that normally you'd be able to be disabled to where you would be able to be ready, totally disabled as far as the work goes. But legally totally disabled, you'd have to have 100% general rating and be totally incapacitated. That'd be equivalent to a person like having the loss of both feet, would be legally disabled, and he wouldn't be able to do job tasks, require walking, so he'd be ready totally. Where if you have the loss of both legs, you'd be totally helpless, but you only have to be substantially helpless to be considered unable to work. And because some of these people don't know the difference between the legal and mental terms, it depends on what they use. If you know what you're talking about, any one of those things, if they say you've got a significant impairment or you've got a moderate symptoms, they're supposed to know how to convert those into the right terminology to give you the right disability and the right care. They don't know how to do that. They know how to do it with physical disabilities. They can see it. You've either got the loss of both feet or you got the loss of both legs, and then they can determine how much care you would need in walking and how much you would get paid if you were disabled due to a certain disability. They have no concept. They just use different terms and they don't even have a clue what the meaning is. And we are the results of whether we get care or not. And that's the problems that you run into with, they can't see your disability.
Right.
When the doctor sees you and evaluates you, he can see if a person's got the loss of both feet. That's what he can tell, so the rating specialist can't. But when you go to get evaluated for PTSD, that doctor cannot see your problems. They're supposed to give you tests and test you what you got left. They'll give you mental tests to find out what you've got in spite of it. So what they have to do, they say, well, he has a 50% of his ability left. That's your gap score. That's what your residual ability. But your rating is based on how much you've lost. So they say, well, if he's got 50% left, he's lost 50%. That would be equivalent to both feet. And the veteran should be paid at the 100% total disability rating. There, they pay him at 50, which is for a 25% impairment. And
so, James, I would say one of the things to me, and I would ask the audience to, if you saw James on the street or sat down at the table with him, you would have no clue that he had a traumatic brain injury. You would not have a clue that he has PTSD.
Right.
And yet he has those things.
Yes. And that's something I wanted to draw attention to, because in spending a lot of time with James and Dora and trying to get help for them, I've experienced times where James will, lose cognitive control, and he'll be, off on a tangent. And because I've come to know him better and I've worked with him and Dora along the way, I'll say, well, wait a minute, and I'll have to stop. But that just came through knowing him a little better and seeing how he functions, and then seeing him, and for lack of a better word, seeing him go off the rails, because we have had occasions where we've been in rooms with James and, he's, you can tell when he's gone kind of left once you've gotten to know him. And I know that, Dora, you've also shared occasions where Lafayette has had some lapses in cognitive memory and has done some things. I remember you shared a story about some things he had done in your backyard and how he'd experienced Vietnam or all over again, right? And so I don't know if you want to share any of that, but you certainly can if you'd like
to. Certainly. And the stories are really comical. I mean, they're dangerous, but they're very comical, after the event occurs. My husband was a retired fireman. So he's always done fires in the backyard, and he would burn brush. And, we have hot dog roast and things like that for the family and for our neighbors. And so they were always seeing him in the back. Well, one day he came inside the house, but he didn't come through the back door off of the property. And he went around the front door and he walked in. Now, usually he doesn't do that because he probably has dirt on his shoes and he leaves them on the back deck. Well, he walks in and he looks out in the front door, he looks outside, and he goes over to the sink and he starts putzing around in the kitchen. And pretty soon he tells my son-in-law, he says, well, look out there. And he points out in the yard. My son-in-law gets up and he starts yelling because the fire is going up the hillside. The fire is not in the fire pit. And so my son-in-law, myself, and my son had to run out there, grab a rake, grab anything, a broom, anything we could find to put the fire out as it was ascending the hillside. And so these are the kinds of things that we had to watch, because you talked to him and he seemed okay, but then he would come inside and you knew he did something really off the wall. And we laughed about it later, but it was no laughing matter at the time.
No, it's not.
And see, one of my problems that if I'm sitting talking to you, in fact, at one time I was a top secret clearance in the Marine Corps, a sergeant. Okay, so normally I would not have problems because of that, but because my head injury PTSD, one of my biggest problems is, I say that I was cooking on the stove, and the phone rang. Well, if I'm on the phone now, I'm focused on the phone. but my thought processes doesn't allow me to go back and realize I'm cooking on the stove. And that's why they determined that I shouldn't live alone, because I would leave the stove on, the water on, different things like that. And yet it said, well, you're very smart. How can you be that smart and not forget to leave the stove on? That's part of my head injury. It's the fact that, and one of the reasons that I've been successful in helping me and other veterans is that I get obsessive and compulsive. So I've been fighting with the VA for all these years, and I go over, and I used to be able to know the regulations forward and backward because I'd go over them hundreds of times.
Yeah.
And then I can learn things, but while I'm learning that, I'm not doing what I should be doing.
Right.
And so that's what one of the doctors finally said. He said the reason he should be doing other things, and he's obsessed with this, and so, like you said, with my head injury and PTSD, with the head injury alone, there's a 50% chance that I'll forget to take my medication and turn the stove on. With my PTSD, there's a 50% chance. If I just had that, if I just had a head injury, there's a 50% chance. So when I'm getting stressed, like there's a 100% chance that I can go from being everything's okay to all of a sudden I'm incapacitated because of the stress. Yeah. So most people look at you and say, well, and I've had some of the nurses at the VA say, I can teach you to not have the problem. I said, you can't teach me.
No. Thank you both for sharing.
They go from anywhere from saying I'm totally incapacitated when it comes to taking my rights away, but I don't need any care when it comes to giving me benefits. Because I'm in between there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a big gap.
You know, Elaine, one of the things that I really appreciate about James is his candidness about his circumstance, his condition, because you can't look at James most of the time and see, but I have had an occasion where I've been in an office with James and he's been fixated on certain things, and it makes it very difficult to get through a conversation because he's stuck there. And so I know that there are those occasions, but I'm grateful for somebody like James who can tell his story and who will tell it clearly. And he's not pretending or faking, as though he has a condition, but he's being very forthright and very, very candid about what that condition is and how it does present itself. And so you have the opportunity to see him in the raw, to see him, where he could go into a room and, you would never know he has a condition, yet he does have to have aid. He has struggled. James has shared with me about his struggle in his marriage because of his PTSD. I also have friends who served in the military and who also their injuries, brain injuries, have led to a series of divorces and marriages along the way. And so I know that people like Dora, who is married to a veteran who suffers from these things, the families are impacted as well. We have one viewer, somebody who is watching the town hall, who mentions the fact that her nephew committed suicide after returning from Iraq due to PTSD. He was waiting for an appointment at the VA, she says, and that was Ray Jane who shared that online. And so, I think this conversation, it's imperative that we have these conversations because so many people probably feel like they're alone and that they're the only one who experiences this issue. But I want people to know not only are they not alone, but that our legislators have a part to play in making things right for our veterans. It's unfortunate when we have people in office who don't understand what their constituents are facing and that they don't make it their business to listen to veterans like James. And then, they make decisions that impact James and Dora, and without regard to how that is going to impact their families and their lives, the quality of their lives. And I just believe that if someone puts their life on the line to serve our country, that they deserve to be taken care of when they come back after having served. They deserve the health care that they need without question.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really struck by the stories that both Dora and James are sharing. That you probably represent thousands, if not maybe millions, of veterans that have come back and had to deal with a difficult system and process that is not fulfilling its mission, which is to serve and help you all, assist to have as the best life you can. And so with saying that, that really leads me into the next question that I would like you to consider is that I would like you to imagine how it might have been different for you, James, and also for you, Dora, but in particular, James, when you first set foot back on American land. What if things had been different for you when you came back? What if you had had support? And so what is the story? What could we create together that we cannot do alone? And so in a world where anything is possible, no limitations, what is the story you would like to see this community, this country live into to support and provide care for our veterans? And I wondered if you had any thoughts. What would have been better for you when you arrived and went to the VA? What would you have liked to have happen?
Okay, when I first, I got wounded in February 4th, and spent in the hospital from February until June, and they released me, and I got out of service in August. And I went home on leave. So I was never sent back to my duty station for my MOS to do it, to see how I reacted after those injuries. So when they released me from the military, they act like I had nothing wrong with me. And I was like a typical Marine. I didn't lose any body parts and stuff. I didn't know I had anything coming to me. So I just got released. No one did anything. But the DAV contacted me, said I had a year's free membership because I got wounded and they represented me in a claim. So they filed a claim. And I got service connected for my physical disabilities right off the bat. But they didn't know I had a traumatic brain injury. They didn't know I had PTSD because I got released from the service. And I got a job with Ohio Bell, which was in communication what I was in, and started having trouble constantly from the time I started working with them. They noticed problems with me. I had trouble with my memory. They sent me to schools. I had trouble. Some of the guys at work, they would set out firecrackers to give them my response. They would hide my tools. They'd do things like that. They thought that was funny. A lot of people did think that. So they'd see a guy maybe with what that used to be called shell shocked.
Right.
It was funny. So my thing is now, what they're trying to do, Iraqi veterans and Afghanistan veterans, as soon as they get out of the service, let them know, get them the jobs and the people in the jobs, not to do that things to them, and also help them. And the biggest thing is to contact their family, if they got a wife, to kind of tolerate and help them. But the VA has to help their wives. I've had more than one. I've been married 4 times, and I've had 2 or 3 months. Beg the VA, please give him some help. And beg them. And so the doctor's telling me that I need to get out of this relationship. If you don't help, nothing happens. I went through 4 marriages like that. Mm-hmm. And originally, I didn't know I had a problem until they didn't find my problem until my employer found it in '85. Was going to fire me from the time I started working for them. And wow, they would retire me. And then VA didn't find it until 1992.
Wow.
And I found out I had a head injury.
Wow. Wow.
That's the problem. We don't know what that happened to these Iraqi veterans. There's 20 some a day killing themselves. And here's the problem. I've asked them, what kind of service are you giving me now for my PTSD? I'm getting it for head injury. You're not giving me anything. And these veterans are killing themselves 22 a day because they're not getting anything for PTSD because they can dress and feed themselves. And I said, you need to give those guys treatment outside so their wives will stay with them, their families will.
Right.
And but to this day, it's the same story like with her husband. They think that they can look at you and you have no problems. You don't need anything. Yeah. And we don't want to see. We want to stop that, and it hasn't yet.
Yeah.
Although they've got programs for the Iraqi veterans and wives, they got a different program they had for us.
Right.
But it's not working. There's 22 a day killing themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my grandson was 22 when he got out, and he's 30 now. And I know that he and my granddaughter are not getting, the VA is not stepping up and supporting them. And so I wonder what you would wish for, what you would want for a young Dora to have been able to find support for you and your husband. What would that look like to you?
I would love, because I'm a methodical person, I would love to have found someone that could give me an instruction booklet, some kind of a reference guide, some kind of a tool of what to do, where to go, who to contact, and perhaps a glossary of terminology. Because I didn't know that my husband was supposed to have a case manager. I didn't know anything about a PAC team. These are things you learn when you talk to the other veterans, the VFW, the American Legion, and someone hears your story and they'll offer to help you. Yeah. So from veteran to veteran, because of the closeness that they have, they're willing to help each other. And I don't find that at the VA. I didn't know there were color-coded teams and those kinds of terminology. So apparently there's a team consisting of a doctor, a nurse, and a social worker. Okay, I didn't know that. There are forms that we think they're supposed to use them according to their regulations, and you look up through their paperwork, and they'll say, "Oh, we don't use that form." The confusion. If they could cut down on the confusion, the VA system could be more organized in directing people to where they're supposed to go, who to call, who to ask. And then when you call those people, that you would hope that they would be professional acting, that their behavior would be professional, that they would refer you. And I experienced being sent to Lafayette's doctor, who had been his doctor for years before he went to the nursing home. And I experienced going there to get paperwork filled out, and with the support of the Butler County Commissioner, who tried to also help me get those papers filled out. He sent them and forwarded them back. Well, the nurse spoke to me and told me to pick the paperwork up the second time, and she hung up on me, and she put it in the progress notes that she disconnected the call because the wife was upset. Well, if your husband were dying and time was of the essence, and the court told you to fill out the form, the VA court and the commissioner, okay, wouldn't you think they're supposed to fill out the form or at least refer me as to where the process takes place? Yeah. That's what we deal with. They hang up on you. Right. Yeah. So that I would like in a better world for veterans, that they would get the help, the guidance, the reference material and numbers and connections that they would need.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So what are your doubts and reservations then, hearing that? What are your doubts and reservations about our capacity? And, because I wonder what, like, as individuals, what each of us can do to help you, because certainly I didn't have this level of awareness until meeting you, reading the documents that you all are having to deal with. And so what are your doubts and reservations about the system changing? What are your doubts and reservations that we as a society will be able to create a better system and process and more humane and caring for our veterans?
Well, my doubts are based on the human race. We're all human, and I know we are fallible. And so as long as you have people, we have people with issues and attitudes, and I understand that. But so my doubts are based on that, just on people. Yeah. However, I remember when we worked years ago, and I hate to, I don't discuss my age, but years ago, we had a professional attitude at work. We were
Right.
trained. We were kind to people. We referred them. We didn't hold back. If we didn't know anything about the issue, we would say, we don't know, but we'll try to find you somewhere. Somebody could connect you. And so those are my reservations. I don't know if there is training at the VA. I don't know what level of training these people receive. I don't know what material they're trained with. And because the VA is so large and basically it's an entity in and of itself, I don't have confidence that things would change that fast. However, we do have people like Vanessa who do care, and she went on a visit with me on an appointment with my permission, and that gentleman really supported my efforts after Dr. Enoch went on my appointment with me.
That's unfortunate that was what was required to get them
Sure.
really respond and listen to you. So
My reservations is because I have dealt with the VA for years, fighting with them, and they have a system set up. You're supposed to, if you go and not getting any the things results you want to, there's a patient advocacy that you can go to. It's called a patient advocacy, but for the VA, it's not. It's the director's advocacy. Their main objective is to keep you from getting your complaints to the director. They have the reception now. Her main job is to keep you from seeing a patient advocate. And once you see the patient advocate and you file a complaint against one of their employees, then instead of them getting in trouble, they file a complaint against you, and then you get in trouble, and then nothing happens to them. So this has been going on, and like I said, just like she said, Vanessa, since she's been involved, she went with me to the county, and they wouldn't even speak to me, said they weren't going to, but because she was there, he had to listen to me, and the things I revealed to him, it opened his eyes. Although he said, "Well, I can't represent you unless you sign a form," and I think Vanessa's one of the times Vanessa seen that it was time to get out of there, and she just said, "It's time to leave. Give him the forms, and we'll decide if he wants to represent him or not." But whenever me and the group I work with knows more than they do, you wouldn't want them to represent you. He could have listened to me. We could have helped him. And some of the things that we found out, we know some of the things that how to get veterans through the system without going to the DAV, American Legion, because they do. And yet they don't want to hear from us. And being there, they listen to her. Just since she's been involved, I have a claim been filed for a long time, and she's involved in it. I'm getting ready to file it because she's been involved. They're going to have to assist with, help us, and so I think within the next few months, with her help, I'll get something accomplished that I've been years trying to go through the system.
Right.
So the hope we have is if we can get Vanessa in there to help veterans. That makes no difference if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you're a veteran, you need to get Vanessa to back us.
As I listened to both of your stories, I was really struck by, the people that you walk in the door. So whether it's the receptionist or the director, they're there to serve you. That's what they're supposed to be there for. And yet I'm wondering how much implicit bias is going on for them, that they've labeled you in some way, and so they just don't listen to anything you're saying, that their implicit bias, their unconscious bias is preventing them. I still remember I was really young and pregnant, and back then you could not work beyond 6 months of pregnancy. And my husband was a student, and we needed food stamps. And I went in to apply to them, and they treated me so badly. I was furious that they were there supposed to help me, that I paid my, paid taxes and all those things to collect the food stamps, and how badly they treated me. And so that stuck with me that they just labeled everyone that comes in as not really deserving of this money or this help kind of thing. And that's what I hear when you talk about the hassle that you've gone through.
They
To just
need to look,
get what they owe you.
Right.
they need to look at everybody that comes in there, if that's one of their family members.
That's exactly right.
If that was their wife or their mother or their
If
brother,
it was their father, their brother.
then they might not. But some of them, I think, will do it even if it was their mother. So that's not 100% accurate.
Well, we could test it.
You know, I think, by the way, there is a comment in the chat from somebody on Inside. I think that's from my campaign manager. She says, "Why do you think our legislators have been so blind to what's happening to our veterans?" And I think the conversation you were just having really speaks to why they've been so blind. A lot of the legislators are very out of touch with what's happening on the ground to citizens like James, like Dora, like me and you, Elaine, for that matter. And they turn a blind eye to it. And in fact, interestingly enough, today I saw a tweet from a bishop in the greater Cincinnati area, and he happens to live in the 8th district. And he tweeted an article that was in the Daily Kos on Warren Davidson, who is the representative who I am running against. And they actually labeled him in July this year the crazy, stupid Republican of the day. And I just want to read something that they had in their article regarding Davidson, which I think speaks to this issue of why some legislators turn a blind eye. And this is a quote directly from the Daily Kos. It says, "For someone well off like Davidson, maybe having your medical care paid for by the Department of Veterans Affairs isn't a choice he has to make. For every blue-collar veteran with injuries endured in the service without a 6-figure salary to pay for physical or mental health treatments to be turned away, that is some crap," they said. And it's frankly outrageous that someone would begin playing the welfare queen's card on fellow service members like that. When people enlist, part of the agreement with the government that a service member gets is after your service is over, the government helps you take care of your medical needs. That's it. And there's no whining about the cost because men and women put their lives on the line. And then they go on to say that one-off comment wasn't the only time that Representative Davidson popped off about who actually deserves medical coverage. At his first town hall as a congressman in early 2017, Davidson was hammered with questions about GOP's wishes to repeal Affordable Care Act, even if there was no replacement for it. Thus, the following exchange occurred, resulting in gasps and boos from those assembled. And I do want to read this statement because I think it's important that people hear some of those comments and understand the sentiments. So a constituent in this district said, "My son did not have health insurance for 4 years until the Affordable Care Act when Medicaid was accepted. He didn't have health insurance because he's in a service industry, and that industry pays minimum wage. And they keep their employees below a certain number of hours so that they don't have to pay health insurance. So many of the people that are on Medicaid are working, and they are the working poor. Under Trump Care, one of the major ways to make health insurance affordable is to bring back catastrophic insurance, which is basically no insurance at all. Given that preventative health care is the number one way to keep people healthy in a society, can you explain why my son and millions of others in his situation are not deserving of affordable, decent health care that has essential benefits that they can stay healthy and continue working?" So wait for it. This is the comment that Warren Davidson made. He said, "Okay, I don't know anything about your son, but as you describe him, his skills are focused in an industry that doesn't have the kind of options you want him to have for healthcare. So I don't believe that these taxpayers here are entitled to give him that. I believe he's got the opportunity to go earn those health benefits. Now, this was a comment made to a mother of a young person who's working a full-time job in the service industry, but somebody with an entitlement mentality who does not understand the struggles that most Americans have could make a comment like that. This person is responsible for representing us in our district here in the 8th Congressional District. I want to also say that this week, Warren Davidson also tweeted something to the tune of people making people should not be entitled to make $15 an hour. These are full-time working people. And he's arguing against being able to, he wants people to go back to making their meager salaries and to take away to not vote positively. He wants Senate to not vote in favor of the HEROES Act, which would enable people to continue to get benefits during the pandemic if they're unemployed. He wants to take away those benefits because those benefits are giving people a livable wage, a livable income while they're off work. And he wants people to return back to those poverty enslaved wages. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's important that people understand what we're dealing with here. And we've got to vote for people who are going to have their best interest at heart.
Can I respond to that just for a second?
Yes.
Okay. I have 100%, 200% for service-connected disability. I also get Medicare because I worked for 21 years and paid in my insurance, and my employer paid in. And I also got United Healthcare because I worked and my employer paid for that. And yet the social worker called my insurance company up and told them when it come to me getting care for my disabilities that I should have to pay for that out of my pocket. In addition, now if I'm not entitled to those benefits, who is? And the same thing like that if a person's working, it was meant to be, if you're working, you make enough money that your employer helps you pay your Social Security and that in there. And then when you get a certain age, you're entitled, that's your money, that's not somebody else. But if you get injured before that and can't work, the government is responsible for taking care of people if they don't have any income to give them the medical care they get. Now, I was Social Security in 1989 and 100% for PTSD. And yet, I'm not entitled to independent living services get paid for by the government or anybody. I'm supposed to pay for it out of my own pocket. And that's why we're saying Warren Davis does not understand that. You're listening to us to tell you, so you can learn how to fix those problems. Because if you're working and you're making enough money, you can get insurance. Here's these people working. They're not giving them insurance, and how are they going to pay for their medical care? They tell me the first thing out of their mouth when I go to get help, you make too much money. I said, I don't care how much, I can make $1 million, but the government caused my problem. They're supposed to pay for it if it costs them $1 million. I'm service connected, and they tell me. And has Warren Davidson done anything to that? You've already started the program, and you're going to help us more, and it's going to get that turned around to where if people don't have any money, everybody should get health care. If you can't work, they should give it to you. If you're working, they should make you get enough money that you can pay your bills, and your employer will help you pay, and the government won't be paying for your care. It'll be you and your employer. Right. But they act like it's coming out of the government itself's money. That's coming out of the people's money. It's working.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate all that you have shared, and it has been really a gift to me because you raised my awareness of things that I did not know about it. Some of the things I suspected, but did not really know or personally know people that have had to fight with the system the way the two of you have for a long time. And I'm really grateful for these conversations. So, and I would ask this of the audience that's been listening. So not only you, James and Dora and Vanessa, but as we get ready to close, I would invite you to reflect on everything we've talked about during this call and everything that's been shared, and ask you, what has been the gift of this conversation for you today?
While you're waiting for a response from the audience, I think.
Oh, I don't know if they will or not, so you go ahead, Dora.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
The gift for me is, we're always looking for hope, always trying to stay positive. We're told to move forward, and those things we should do. It's difficult to do when you're very emotionally involved.
Right.
But what gives me hope today is someone is listening, someone wants to know, someone is asking, and we have the ability to share. And when you can release your frustrations, you feel a lot better. My health has been so challenged because of the fight that I have been having, and it's over time. It's been over time. And so you're nervous, your stomach is in knots, you don't feel good, you're fighting depression and those things. But I can say my gift today is that I do see something positive here happening, and hopefully people will listen. Hopefully people will look at the website and pull up the video and be more aware of what's going on. And knowledge is power.
Yes,
And so if we get that knowledge, whatever knowledge I get, I'm going to share. James has shared with me. I've had a few other people share with me. We want Vanessa to get all of this knowledge so she can take it wherever this leads her. Wherever she goes, we're going to push Vanessa. She's young, she's ambitious, she's smart, she's got a vision, and I feel hopeful that she'll be working somewhere throughout this country in politics with legislators, with people who make decisions, and I think she's going to be effective in directing the decisions for future use. So that's my hope today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora. I did notice that we had a hand raised. Dr. Pinchback-Hines, I think, wants to say something. Do you want to speak? I've given you access to the mic if you'd like to speak.
I just want to say a few words. First of all, I think this has been an excellent discussion. I believe it's been extremely eye-opening, listening. I must say at times it brought me nearly to tears just listening to the stories. Very real. And what really hit me, I suppose, is also how families, the impact that this has on families. And you were talking, Dora, about your son. I recently met him, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's in school, and this is difficult, for parents. And then, of course, Mr. Shepherd, as I've listened to your comments about how many times you've been married, there is a failure, a serious failure in our legislation in the system to let this happen. And I think it's important to continue sharing as you are, and continue choosing, our legislators who will support us and support our causes. And I say us because I believe that in there somewhere is my life too, having taught students who are victims of trauma, of different types. And then, and I guess as I was thinking too, I have friends whose spouses are NFL football players, and I noticed that there was a lot of attention to their cause. And I'm wondering if there's the same type of attention to the veterans as there is to the NFL players. I mean, they're all, it's PTSD still, that brain injury and how devastating that can be. We have to do something, and I agree with you that Doc Enoch is going to be the person who can also help write the laws, help make a difference in the lives of veterans and those who suffer from PTSD, and also in helping to heal the families and addressing their needs as well. So thank you for this opportunity. And Sister Elaine, thank you for your fine facilitating skills. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hines. I also see that Mr. Paul Gomia would like to speak. He's on here as well. Mr. Gomia, you can go ahead with your question or comment.
All right, thank you. I'm a friend with Lafayette and Dora, and I've seen all their difficulties firsthand. And definitely they have encountered a lot of struggles, but with her standing tall and standing out, she has sure made a difference for what's going on with him. I have a brother who has PTSD from Vietnam time when some planes crashed on an aircraft carrier he was on. And his whole life, he's been through multiple marriages and multiple jobs and lived on the street. And the VA just told him that he had PTSD, but it wasn't quite enough to qualify for any kind of treatment or any kind of help. But he lives an isolated life, drinking and smoking in the back of his trailer. And he's one of those that's just kind of stuck there. But he didn't have the endurance and desire to keep fighting it, to the end. I was a physical therapist during the Vietnam time, and I treated a lot of physical patients, but they had mental issues way early on, but those weren't addressed. And I mean, we had to have a guard while we were treating patients so that they wouldn't act out and injure us because of their anger. So I've seen it firsthand in the old days, and I'm a veteran myself, and I get care at the VA, and anything I can help Dora and everybody do, I'm sure right up there with them and with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomia. And for the audience, there is one comment that I wanted to share from the audience. Deborah Cameron says, do you feel it's fair for there to be a disability rating when being evaluated to qualify for higher rate of compensation? VA evaluates TBI at 0, 10, 40, 70, and 100%. And so I think that's just a comment, but, and that's something I think that veterans have to let us, tell us what's going on, tell us how these kinds of things have impacted you, like Dora and James have come forward to do today. I truly appreciate all that they have shared, but for those of you who might have had those kinds of things happen, or you've struggled with the system and the rating system, as James has, he has explained some of the challenges with that rating system, and I think we don't want to miss that. He talked about how when someone has a physical impairment, when they've lost a limb, you can see their disability. You can see the impact that it's had on them. But for somebody who is mentally impaired because they've sustained a brain injury, we can't see the brain. We can't see inside of someone's head or inside of someone's mind to see how these kinds of things have impacted them. But just because we can't see it does not mean that the severity of it does not impact their quality of life and their loved ones and the way that they function. And so I think that that's the important thing that we wanted to highlight in this conversation. So I'll turn it back over to you, Elaine.
Yeah, one of the things that's coming up for me as we continue to talk about these invisible injuries, it is the idea, why do we give it a 10 or a 12, 20 or whatever kind of rating? Why isn't it you either have it or you don't, and we've tested you and you have a brain injury, therefore you qualify for all the help that you need? Why, if you have PTSD, then you get all the help you need. It's not varying degrees of illness, it's you have it, therefore. And so I'm just struck by why these constructs that we have created to
Well,
like,
Elaine, yeah, most of that is because, and James can address this better than I can. Most of that separation of rating is connected to the amount of money that that person receives.
I get that. I get that.
It's all about the money.
It's all about the money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can explain that to you also. See, the veterans is one of the conditions that the government caused their injury.
It's right.
So they have to pay them for their injury, even if they work. So if you've got the loss of a foot or a hand, they got to pay you so much money, even if you work. Social Security only pays you, but like you said, as far as treatment goes, they'll give you all the treatment you need for your disability. But as far as those percentages, it's to see how much the veterans should get paid, regardless if he's working or not. So when they take about a 0, a 10 says, if you claim you have a mild memory loss, but they can't find one, they'll give you 10. If they find a mild memory loss, they give you a 40 rating, which means you should be paid at that would cause an 80% employment handicap, and you should be paid 80%, the same as the physical. If you've got what they call major neurocognitive disorder, that will cause at least a 50, and that would be a major which I'm being diagnosed. That means that you would be 50%, means there's a 50% chance you're going to forget to take your medicine, and you would be paid at the L rate, the same as a guy who lost both feet. If they give you a 70, that's the same as a guy with both hands, and you get, but you would get treatment, like you said. A person could need more treatment than not, but if you're not service connected, they'll give you the treatment, but you don't get the money. If you're service connected, you're supposed to get both, even if you're working.
Absolutely.
So that's why the rating goes.
I know.
The biggest thing is they got to double your functional impairment to get your loss of earnings, and they don't do that.
Yeah. Well, I would encourage all of us to write our legislators, our congressmen, our senators, and ask them to do better. And so get on the phone, call them, tell them.
I think Vanessa's going to do that for us. She's going to come, even before the election, she's working across party lines with me and Dora. We've got to go through who's elected right now. She's making us to where she's telling them, I'm sending these guys to you. You better do something.
Right. We're watching.
You don't, I'm going to.
Yeah. Well, and I think we as the community need to tell them, we are watching what you're doing. We're watching, we're paying attention. And we do it by calling them, by sending them letters, by showing up at their office, those kinds of things. So those are things that we can let them know that we are interested, we are paying attention. So I'm really grateful to have all of you here. And Vanessa.
I was just going to say, and we have the power to change things with our vote.
Yes.
Davidson can take our votes for granted because people are simply going into the voting booth and checking off names because they have a D or an R after their name. And in particular, in this district, many people are just checking the box because there's an R without really considering the impact that it's having on our lives. The median household income in the 8th Congressional District is about $6,000 less than the national median household income. So we're not talking about a district where people are extremely wealthy. There are pockets of the district where there are some wealthy people, but overall, this is a working class district, and the people in this community are struggling. And that's the thing that the legislator who currently is taking up space, and let me say as well, that he has introduced the fewest number of bills in Congress. He literally is just there taking up space. And we can't afford another 2 years of having someone just there to take up space. We need somebody in that seat who could make substantive change in this district. And that's why I'm running. I'm running because I care about the people in the district. I'm running because I care about all of the people in the district. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're a human being. And I think that we have to all get beyond this point in this country where we're struggling over the letters behind your name. And I mean, all letters behind our names. We have to look out for the best interest of one another And the only way we can do that and get beyond it is if we start making different decisions, if we take the first step to care about our neighbors, to care about one another. I went to a gun violence rally in Springfield last week, and my message to people who are raising young people is that we have to teach them to value life and to value one another. And until we get to a point where we begin to care about somebody, care about people, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of whether their hair is black or silver, as mine is quickly turning silver, regardless to whether they're young or old, we have to care about one another as human beings. We have to begin to make better decisions, even for ourselves. And if we're, people don't want to wear a mask because, I think it's just simply a selfish decision not to wear a mask. It's selfish for the people you love. It's selfish for the people who you don't know when you come in contact with people, because none of us know at any given time whether we're carrying a virus or not. It's just about valuing human beings and valuing life and caring about people, no matter who they are, no matter what walk of life they're from. So I just wanted to say that. And as we're coming to a close in this particular conversation, so I want to say this. Thank you so much, Elaine, for facilitating this conversation. It's always a pleasure to be able to have the conversation, but moreover, to have somebody so skilled in being able to facilitate the conversation and to draw out the important things that need to be said. And thank you so much, James and Dora, for continuing to stand, not just for yourselves, but for other people who might be struggling in the same way you are struggling. Thank you for being here. James, you look like you want to say something. I don't want
to say one more thing. What you said.
Uh-huh.
I've had, a couple of white friends ask me, why should I vote for you?
Uh-huh.
And my life matters, about the white and black life. I said, what it is that because of the Black Lives Matter movement, all lives matter now. They've always been policemen, been brutality. They didn't care if it was black or white. It's just the blacks stood up for the blacks years ago, and a lot of them got hurt, beat up, and stuff. But because of that movement, now all lives matter. I mean, not now. They always lives matter, but the black lives brought it to the attention. Even good policemen do not want bad policemen. The brutality. So
Right.
if we work together now, because of the Black Lives Movement, all lives matter. That's what, and I think that, and so you're for. You don't care if they're white, black, whatever it is.
Right.
But if you're a veteran, whatever color you are, even if you're pink, you better vote for you because you are concerned about veterans.
Thank you.
Especially veterans.
Thank you for saying that, James. I've so many people, there are people supporting my candidacy of all races or various gender and age and yes, exactly. And so I will say this, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. And you're absolutely right, James, that in people standing up and stepping up and saying, we have to care about one another, and Black lives do matter. And once Black lives matter, then all lives will matter. And that is the key there. I appreciate you just saying that, just speaking out and just saying that, because, I'm not afraid to deal with race. I want to talk about it. I think, it bothers me when people say, I don't see race. If you don't see race, you don't see people, because we are, we're colored in different shades. And, what I don't see is I don't see your heart, but I see your heart, right? I can't see it, but you display who you are, your character. You display your heart through your character, through the things you say and the things you do. And we're actually living in the time where Martin Luther King only dreamed about. And that's a time where we can, judge people based on the content of their character. And I think that as we continue to teach and train our children, that we're going to see a better generation. We're going to see people transform and change. And if there's anything that has happened as a result of Donald Trump's presidency, because race did become such a great factor in our communities across the country, is that people's eyes have been opened about the impact that people of color have sustained. Black people have endured in this country since our inception as a nation. And it's important that we have those conversations. We shouldn't continue to ignore those things, because when something impacts one of us, it impacts all of us. And I think that this virus has shown more than anything that when we are living in a world, not even just a nation, that when one person gets sick, we all have the ability to get sick and even die from that sickness. So we need to stop all viruses, including the virus of racism. So I appreciate you having said that, James. I'm so blessed by just having this conversation with all of you. And so, Elaine, are we done here?
I think we're done here. I just want to, I just really appreciate all that's been shared here and how we all spoke from our hearts.
Yes. And so let me say this in closing. For anyone out there who is listening to this video, this chat after the fact, I want to invite you to get involved in our campaign. You can go to enochforcongress.com and click on volunteer and get involved in our campaign in any capacity. Once you click on volunteer, you'll see the various ways that you can get involved. So I want to invite you to do that. I also want to invite you and even ask you, implore you to donate to our campaign. Campaigns cost money. It's very expensive to get the word out to people that I'm running, but also share this town hall. Come back in a couple of weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another town hall. We do this normally at lunchtime. So we want this to be your daily nourishment. So come back, share the town halls, get on our distribution list. You can do that at enochforcongress.com as well. Get on that distribution list, get our newsletters so we can inform you about what's coming up. There's an opportunity to contact us and let us know what's on your mind and on your heart so that we can talk about that too. If there are things that you think we need to be talking about on these town hall meetings. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in. And I just want to say for all the veterans also who have tuned into this conversation, that this conversation is for you. And I salute you. I see my friend John Locke, who is a veteran on the chat. So I just want to say, sir, to you and to all the veterans who have joined us today, that we do salute you. We thank you for your service. We thank you, James, for your service. And of course, Dora, we thank you for supporting Lafayette, your husband, and we thank him for his service. So I can't thank you all enough for being here. Thank you so much for this conversation. Join us again when we have our next conversation. Elaine, do we already have a topic for 2 weeks from now?
We do. We will be talking with the Farmers Union. Awesome. The focus is small farmers and how they're impacted by corporate farms. Awesome. And so I think that would be an excellent conversation.
Definitely.
And I'll learn a whole lot about farming that I didn't know about.
Exactly. And having been from a rural town, I would say we all need to be here listening. We all need to know the importance of farmers to our community. So please do join us and listen to the conversation in 2 weeks when we talk to the farm community. So thanks all for being here. You guys have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.